certainly understand that, the Bible teaches us that our days are numbered and that the Lord has them numbered in His book. And so there is that concern when you think of a sentence of death, that it is a person deciding when someone would die, and that is perhaps going against God and His Word. I can understand those rationales for it. But again, this is another reason why in our country we need to be people of prayer. We need to pray for our lawmakers, and we need to listen to this conversation. A lot of times we want justice. We want to pronounce a sentence. We want vengeance. We want to feel justified in saying, this person did this to me, therefore I think they should pay in this way. And honestly, so many times it is not our individual decision to make. And in many cases, we do need to leave it to the court system, and we do need to leave it in the hands of God and trust that even if someone gets away with it in a court of law, that they will not get away with it in the eyes of God. And so it's a very difficult, very tender conversation. It is a very sensitive issue that a lot of people deal with, and I just wanted to make you all aware so that you could join me in praying for our different lawmakers and our different court systems around the country and all of the different states that wrestle with whether or not we should have the death penalty. On a little bit of a lighter note, before I go to the other issue, the other topic that speaks so much to the value of a human life, there are so many stories I read. I don't necessarily have an affinity for or a love for crime stories, although I do pay attention to different attacks, different murders, and different police reports and things like that. Not because I have a fascination with the event. I have a fascination with the mental state of why does somebody do some of the things that they do? What makes a person, other than just saying, well, it's sin, which I know is the root cause of all of our sinful acts and disobedience against the Word of God, but what specifically triggered a person to do something that they did? I'll give you a great example. There was a 12-year-old boy who was supposed to be living in Florida with his sister and with his father and stepmother and attending school. However, he died in an Indiana hospital a week or so ago, a little over a week ago, and he had signs of abuse, neglect, and starvation. This 12-year-old boy had been chained to and kept in a dog collar. He had been starved, he had been chained, and kept in a dog collar in a bathroom, and his own mother didn't even know that he left the state of Florida and ended up in an Indiana hospital. This 12-year-old boy was neglected, he was beaten, he was confined by his 32-year-old father, by his 25-year-old stepmother, and they are obviously in prison. They have been arrested. But the couple slowly starved him to death in a Bloomington, Indiana motel, which is how he ended up escaping. And again, everybody thought the boy lived in Florida with these people, and they were out of the state and were all the way in Indiana. And like I said, his own mother, who he didn't live with, but his own mother didn't even know where he was. But he had been out of the state of Florida for a week, and again, was abused, was starved, was chained in a bathroom, had a dog collar on. And we read stories like that and we think, the first thing we think is, what's wrong with people? Why would you take a 12-year-old boy and treat him worse than what you would do with a dog, with an animal? Why would you treat a 12-year-old boy this way? You see, this is the heart of the issue with what is the value of human life. I'm not talking about somebody that has been a terrible person, someone who has committed murder, someone who has done something that is awful and terrible. We're talking about a 12-year-old boy who, okay, he's 12. I'm sure he's been disobedient. I'm sure that he's talked back. I'm sure he was doing some, 12-year-old boy types of things to be an irritant to his family. But did any of that warrant him being chained into a bathroom with a dog collar and being starved and being beaten? We have to ask ourselves and honestly just think for just a moment, what is the value of human life? And if as a parent you are bringing life into the world, you're being entrusted by God with that child. You have a responsibility to care for that child. If that care, if that responsibility is more than you can bear, if that burden, if that frustration, if the obedience and the discipline and training that child is just more than you can handle, then get some help. But treating your own son and allowing your wife, this boy's stepmother, to engage in and join in on mistreating this 12-year-old boy is just inexcusable. I mean, he was severely starved. He had bruises, lacerations, ulcers all over his body. I mean, it was a shock collar they had around his neck. He was chained to a bathtub towel bar in a motel bathroom. Absolutely inappropriate, no place whatsoever for that. What is the value of human life? Why do parents see their own children less than how other people would look at a 12-year-old? It's almost as though because that child belonged to this family and belonged to this father, that he valued the life of this boy less than I do. And I didn't even know the child. But I can't possibly imagine what would lead a father and a stepmother to treat a 12-year-old child this way. Listen, whenever you walk around town, whenever you go into a store and you see families and you see people walking together and you see children, you have no idea what goes on behind the closed doors of their home. But I want to challenge you, the next time you see families together and you see children in a store or going up and down the aisle in a grocery store, just stop for a moment and pray. And just pray that whatever is going on behind closed doors of that family, that God would be in control. And that child would be protected and loved and safe. I read another story that, again, you're talking about what is the value of human life, the exact opposite of what I just shared with you. There's a couple that got married in the ICU. His bride, the groom, decided that they were going to get married in ICU, and the bride was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and heart failure. And they took some beautiful pictures together, dressed her up in a beautiful dress, and of course he wore the tux, and she's got the flowers, and she was 25 years old, had a lump in her neck that she noticed, and was diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma and progressive heart failure, and is in the hospital in Melbourne, Australia. And he decided that he would propose to her, and her response was overwhelming. And like I said, they did her hair, makeup, beautiful dress, flowers, right there in ICU, laying in a hospital bed, tubes connected to her, wires connected to her, and they got married right there. You know, I read a story like this, and instantly my thought is, that is incredibly sweet, but it's also incredibly tragic. Because here is a 25-year-old young lady who has just pronounced herself to be the loving bride of this thoughtful, loving, kind young man. She is battling for her life, and all we could do is pray that God brings healing to her so that she can live a long, healthy life with him. How tragic would it be that this beautiful young couple would not be able to see their 25th or 50th wedding anniversary? You know, they may not make it 5 years. She may not make it 5 months with stage 4 cancer and heart failure. But you see, love wins in this story. And because she loved him and because he loves her, they wanted to, before God and before witnesses, they wanted to pronounce their love to each other and be married. That is a heartwarming story that tells you that people value human life. She wanted to marry this man if she was going to die in this hospital in 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, however long, or if she was going to walk out of this hospital. She wanted to die having been the wife of this young man. That's a wonderful story of life. It's a wonderful story of love for him to look at this woman and say, I'm going to be by your side. I'm not leaving you. I'm going to be here with you. I'm sure he was already there and already professed his love and already had a strong commitment to be with her, but now took it to almost a catastrophic, a mind-blowing level. Just infinitely more, saying, I will be with you, I will love you, I will be by your side, and I want to be your husband and walk alongside with you through this journey. And thanks be to God that people love each other like that. So many stories of spouses walking out on other spouses in their worst moments and looking at a person laying in a hospital bed and seeing what they can't do for you. But you know, love is not about that. It is about what can I give to you. And he gave her a gift of hope, gave her the gift of love, gave her the gift of commitment, and gave her the gift of himself. And they gave that gift to each other. And I'm so thankful to read a story like this, because when you think, what is the value of human life? That is the value of commitment in human life right there. That regardless of how many breaths this young lady has left on this earth, whether it is in the millions or whether it is in the dozens, this young man says, I'm going to be by your side. It's an amazing story, and it reminds you the value of human life is always greater than what some people say that it is. Give you another example. And again, as I said, I have no fascination with stories like this. I don't read these stories because they do something for me. I read these kinds of stories because I wonder what is in the human heart, what influences a person to do this kind of thing. There was a 29-year-old woman in New York who had been brutally beaten and raped last week. She jumped out of a second-floor window where she had been assaulted for 6 hours by a 53-year-old man. They were looking for him and seeking to arrest him in Queens, right outside of Manhattan in New York City. I mean, this woman went through 6 hours of torment under this man and was willing, like I said, to jump out of a 2-story window just to get her freedom back. Now, those kinds of stories, you can find those in any city. You can find them in any town. You can find stories like that of sexual assault or personal assault or robbery or homicide. I mean, those kinds of stories are, unfortunately, are a dime a dozen. And especially in bigger cities, it seems as though those kinds of things happen far too regularly. So why do I bring it up? Because you're talking about one person having enough dominance over another person, to abuse them for 6 hours to the point that someone would be